The Galactic Council had witnessed many species rise and fall across the cosmos, but none had prepared them for humanity's entrance into the interstellar stage. When the Zephyrian Empire declared war on the fledgling human colonies, most council members expected another swift conquest, another primitive species crushed beneath the weight of superior technology and overwhelming numbers. Admiral Kethavar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Edge, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. 3 human colonies lay before them, their defenses laughably primitive. The humans had barely achieved faster-than-light travel, while the Zephyrians had been masters of the void for millennia. "Begin the bombardment of the outer settlements," Kethavar commanded, his forearms gesturing dismissively at the screen. "Make it quick. I want to be back in Imperial space before the next cycle." The fleet's weapons charged with a characteristic whine that had preceded the destruction of countless worlds. Energy beams lanced out toward the human settlements, expecting to find hastily erected shields that would crumble within minutes. Instead, something impossible happened. The beams simply stopped. Not absorbed, not deflected. They ceased to exist the moment they touched the colony's defensive perimeter. On the tactical display where 3 human settlements had been marked, now showed only empty space. "Sensor malfunction," Kethavar snarled. "Recalibrate immediately." But the sensors weren't malfunctioning. The colonies were gone, not destroyed, but vanished entirely from their previous coordinates. Long-range scans detected them moments later, now positioned behind the Zephyrian fleet in a perfect encirclement formation. "Impossible," whispered Kethavar's tactical officer. "Nothing that size can move instantaneously. The energy requirements alone would—" His words died as communication. Channels across all frequencies suddenly activated simultaneously. Every screen, every speaker, every neural interface in the Zephyrian fleet displayed the same image. A single human sitting calmly in what appeared to be a simple chair in an unremarkable room. The human looked young by their species' standards, with brown hair and eyes that held depths that seemed older than the stars themselves. When he spoke, his voice carried clearly across the void, translated perfectly into every language known to the fleet. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth Colonial Defense Force," the human said, though the image clearly showed a male figure. The discrepancy sent chills through the Zephyrian command structure. "You have 3 seconds to power down your weapons and retreat to your home territory." Kethavar's mandibles clicked in amusement. One human issues demands to the entire 7th Imperial Fleet. Their species' arrogance knows no bounds. He opened a return channel. "I am Admiral Kethavar of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender unconditionally or—" "2," the human interrupted, his expression unchanged. "Or we will reduce your pathetic colonies to stellar dust." "1." The human leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper, yet somehow every being in the fleet heard it with perfect clarity. "Try me." What happened next would be debated in xenological circles for centuries. The Zephyrian fleet simply ceased. Not destroyed in any conventional sense. There were no explosions, no debris fields, no energy signatures. 6,000 warships and their crews found themselves sitting in the vacuum of space, their vessels intact but completely powerless. Life support functioned, artificial gravity remained stable, but every weapon, every engine, every communication array beyond basic short-range systems had become as responsive as cold metal. But that wasn't the truly terrifying part. The terrifying part was that each ship now carried a single human passenger. They appeared simultaneously across the entire fleet, not transported, not teleported, but simply present where they hadn't been before. Each human wore the same unremarkable civilian clothing, each carried themselves with the same unsettling calm, and each one began to speak. On Kethavar's flagship, the human materialized directly on the bridge. He was elderly with silver hair and hands marked by decades of work, yet he moved with the fluid grace of a predator. "Admiral," the human said conversationally, as if they were old friends meeting for tea. "I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You seem to think humanity is just another species to be conquered." Kethvar reached for his sidearm, but his hand passed through it as if it were a hologram. Around the bridge, his crew found themselves similarly unable to interact with their equipment. "What are you?" Kethvar demanded. The human smiled sadly. "We're what happens when a species discovers that consciousness isn't produced by matter. It's what matter is produced by. We're what happens when imagination becomes indistinguishable from reality." He gestured to the view screen, where the 3 human colonies continued their orbital dance around the Zephyrian fleet. Every human child learns that belief shapes reality. We just learn to believe very, very carefully. Across the fleet, 6,000 similar conversations were taking place. Each human explained patiently, kindly, but with absolute firmness that the war was over, not because humanity had won through superior firepower or tactics, but because they had collectively decided that the war simply would not continue. "Your ships will be returned to Zephyrian space," the elderly human continued. "Your crews will be unharmed. But understand this. Humanity extends its protection to any species that asks for it. Aggression against our allies becomes aggression against us, and we will respond accordingly." "This is impossible," Kethvar repeated, his worldview crumbling. "Physics doesn't work this way. Reality doesn't work this way. Reality works exactly the way conscious beings collectively agree it works," the human replied. "For most species, that agreement is unconscious, automatic, limited by what they believe to be possible. Humans learn to make that agreement deliberately." His expression grew somber. "We learned because we had to, because we nearly destroyed ourselves before we understood that the universe is far stranger and more wonderful than any of us imagined." Within the hour, the Zephyrian fleet found itself back in Imperial space, their ships fully functional, their crews unharmed but fundamentally changed by the experience. The war, indeed the very concept of the war, had been quietly edited, out of reality's current narrative. News of the incident spread through the galactic community at the speed of thought itself. The Galactic Council convened emergency sessions to discuss the implications of a species that had somehow transcended the basic laws of physics through what could only be described as applied imagination. But in the end, the Council's response was simple. They sent a message to Earth, officially welcoming humanity to the galactic community and respectfully requesting to establish diplomatic relations. After all, when dealing with a species that could rewrite reality with a whispered challenge, diplomacy seemed infinitely preferable to discovering what other impossibilities they might make possible. The human colonies continued their peaceful expansion among the stars, protected not by weapons or shields, but by the collective understanding that sometimes, when someone whispers, "Try me," with quiet confidence, the wisest response is to simply choose not to try at all.